Hello and welcome to 10 by 9, where 9 people have up to 10 minutes each to tell a true story from their own life. I'm Paul Dorn, and this is the 10 by 9 podcast. There's an autumn crispness to the air here in Ireland right now, but before saying goodbye to summer, let's go back to August 21st. We were, as usual, in 10 by 9's home venue in the Black Box here in Belfast, where it all started in 2011. And the theme for the evening was beauty.
Or a bassist again, maybe a drummer this time, maybe with tattoos this time, maybe with abs. No, that's how they get you.
I remember a woman saying she drove her husband mad when she only ate half an after eight and put the other half back in the envelope. Half an after eight.
And Marilyn would go on to tell this story to her children with faux despair, saying, if my mom hadn't been so stubborn, we could have been rich.
So prepare for 3 beautiful stories of heartache, food-ache and love. But first, in July, I put out a heartfelt call to arms for the women of 10 by 9 to come forward with more stories, as we were very male heavy. And they responded. On the night, 7 of our stories were from women, and one of those was a first-timer, which was great. Here she is. Say hello to Clare Duffy. Just be aware there are 2 perfectly appropriate F-bombs in this story.
I can't do yesterday again tomorrow, so please do not make me try. Feel better, move forward, keep going, grow stronger, resilience, all that, but capacity can fill, breaking point exists too much, too far, a straw on a camel, all of that. I thought you were so beautiful, but you look a little evil to me now. They say, he did what to you? And how did he think you'd get away with that? Well, I smiled and I told him well done and I wished him good luck and I wished good things for him. You don't know where I got that idea from. Probably thin air, probably my own head, probably some notion I picked up out of nowhere all on my own. Probably not from things you say, like, I want you, like, home is this place now, like, you're a big part of that. I miss you, I can't get hurt here. You told me it was all in my head, so I start to think, what else have I been making up in there, silly? People listening to what I have to say, my words having any worth or weight to them. I wanted late nights talking and watching the sun come up and morning sex. And I've got hangovers and restless nights filled with questions and existential dread with my morning coffee. I'm afraid that I'm going to spend years getting over days. I watch films, they end, and this is comforting to me. I look for answers in scripts and scripture. I read poems prescribed to me. I write words that no one will see. I scratch your names into stories, into notes, into stones. I took your pain as a promise that we would take care of each other now. You made me take a stand here when you didn't want me strong and standing. You made me grieve for you and to you and for me. You said that I don't want to hear it, but I don't know what you think you have said for me to hear and ignore. You make my thoughts undeserving of space, like my words don't deserve to fill the air, like my reality is wrong. It was brief, but it hurt like whiplash, like a gunshot, like a snapshot of how life could be. Time does not undo the way you think it does. You maybe wanted to edit it. You maybe wanted me to forget. You wanted someone with a mind like mine, you said. Now you've reduced me to tears in club bathrooms when I thought I'd have Saturday nights cooking and dancing alone with you. What did I expect from things so empty as words? You said my point of view doesn't exist, so I wrote it down. I write an ad, girl for sale. She will show up late, she will spill, she will laugh loud, she will seek better, she will hope freely. She will agree to too much, inevitably let someone down. Looking for a dream she had but forgets the details of, or looking for some long-haired musician or a biker or a lawyer or a thinker or a bassist again, maybe a drummer this time, maybe with tattoos this time, maybe with abs. No, that's how they get you. Maybe a yoga guy, or maybe someone with an empty bank account and living with their ma, but they have their own car and always have cash, still dreaming big. She will find age-appropriate hobbies like complimenting babies or craving Laura Ashley. When all was said and done, meaning when you didn't want to say anymore and I was left confused and unsure of myself and unsure of my life and lacking and in love with ideas that felt like plans and with pain that felt like an unfinished story, and I was on the edge, always ready but not prepared and endlessly on the brink, and both deft at deciphering words you spoke and thrown by anything you say and do. When I was forever, eternally, perpetually yours, I realised then that the lists were no good, the ads were no good, the questions drove me mad, the thoughts were not useful. I realised then that this was quitting, that there were stages to this, and one day, far away or very soon, I would change my ways with regards to you and stop saying things I never said to you, to myself, to make this make sense. I hoped for this quitting, and I told myself these hows, for this quitting to last and for it to be the last time I have to quit. So I will stop wanting to dance with you to a song that is ours and kiss you in our kitchen and fuck in our shower just once because the height difference means water's always getting in my eyes or even anywhere, and we'd have all these other places to fuck anyway. I'll stop daydreaming about a little kid that you'd build a doll's house for with bespoke furniture and rooms filled with their favourite ideas. I'll stop wanting to go to your home and belong in your life outside of this adventure and to meet your mum and realise that she and I are alike. I bet that we are, and I bet that this is funny to you and that you roll your eyes at yourself for this straight obviousness which isn't a mould you usually fit within. I'll stop chasing you. I have never done that before, and I don't know why I thought it would be a good idea now. I'll stop loving you. When I figure out how, I will, I have to, I can. I don't have you. I'll stop trying to soften the edges of hard things that are hitting you and me, because there is no you and me, and I maybe don't believe this yet, but I'm sure as us continues to cease to exist and be intangible, I'll be able. I'll stop thinking of you when I read something I like that I know you'd like. I'll stop asking you to see me. I know someone will eventually, and maybe I'll see them like I see you. I'll stop thinking that being vulnerable is something I can ask of someone else. I'll stop saying no to nice others who tell me that I'm what they want, and I have been for a long time. This will feel nice someday, and this unease will go away. I'll stop fighting against my common sense because of a feeling. One day, not yet, but one day, I'll forgive you for not being brave this one last time when I was this one last time. I'll stop feeling things with my whole heart and letting that lead. This one sounds sad, but it is essential for my survival. And you, and you, and you, I don't know what you'll do or follow or where you'll go or what life you'll run to. I didn't know you'd be so painful. I didn't know you'd believe so little in me and in your own self and wants and in our ability to figure any big thing out. You'll have kids and you'll love them so much you'll be happy, like I could have made you every day until then. You'll find some girl from back home who is nothing like me in all the ways I surprised you by being like you. You'll think that she is what you want because you never had me. You'll tell yourself that your differences are what make her perfect for you and that you and I would have argued. We would have, but we would have laughed so much, and we would have laughed in our fighting, and we would have kissed and got over ourselves quickly because I'm good at seeing things from your point of view and your pain, and you're good at seeing things from mine. You'll find reasons that this was all part of something bigger and tell them to yourself like a mantra every morning. You'll forget me, but you'll remember me when you achieve things that I told you would, and it will piss you off. You'll realize that you aren't as complicated as you've had to become, not really, not where it matters. I will stop believing that people can love like I can. I'll stop wanting you someday. I'll quit. Just you watch.
Thanks so much, Claire. That was really something very special. So much beauty in that writing. I hope you'll be back with us again soon. 10 by 9 is always on the lookout for new storytellers, just like Claire. So get in touch at 10by9.com, especially if you're a little reluctant or shy. After all, you're the people 10 by 9 was created for. Anyway, I look forward to hearing from you. All our events and themes are on our website. Okay, on to our next story, and it had been a while since we'd had her at the mic. Here's Rhonda Glasgow with her beauty story.
Did you see the Olympics? There were so many amazing stories of resilience, success and gold medals, but there were also tears, misery and hope stashed at the last minute. One such athlete was a female Indian wrestler called Vinesh Phokat. She was disqualified the morning of her competition. She had been assured a silver medal after previous fights, but would now come last. Why? At the weigh-in before her fight, she was 110 grams over the maximum allowed. 110 grams is about the weight of a Big X chocolate bar. Poor Vinesh. Apparently she'd been up all night, frantically jogging, skipping and cycling. She even cut her hair, but to no avail. They still disqualified her. I have little in common with Olympic athletes, obviously, but I and many others like me could feel her pain. Many, many times I've queued in a cold assembly hall to stand on a scale and gaze into the eyes of a sympathetic, though skinny woman who would say, down, maybe 1 pound, 2 pounds, half a pound. Your heart would lift, your hopes restored, the sneaky Kit Kat in the garage forecourt already forgotten. Down was the best news ever. Up, on the other hand, plunged you into despair. You'd look puzzled, surprised. Really? Your mood would plummet. I have accumulated years of experience in this area. Tonight I want to lift the lid on the world of the fat club, diet club, trimtastic, skinny dippers, whatever you want to call it. Maybe you know someone who has a strange weekly pattern. On a given day of the week, they're grumpy and anxious, spend half that day going in and out of the toilet. They eat a diet yogurt at lunchtime and their stomach rumbles all afternoon. Where do they go that evening? What actually happens? I am a veteran of many dieting clubs, big and small. I have lost a lot of weight. You might be surprised, but then I go back to my old ways and I join another group and lose that same weight again. I first went to swimming club in my late 20s with a friend. I went with a sense of hope and nervous embarrassment as to what was going to take place. I wore my normal clothes and shoes. Little did I know, but I stood out as a rookie from the very start. The first surprise is that not everyone at the club actually looked overweight. In fact, some were positively svelte, but more of that later. Most of the women queued up in the middle of the hall with t-shirts and leggings and socks. The procedure was you arrived, paid your money, got your card on which the teacher recorded your weight week to week, set your belongings on a chair and joined the queue to be weighed. Oh yes, publicly weighed, it is tough. At these chairs, people offloaded their heavy handbags, heavy jewellery, and of course, they took off their heavy shoes before joining the queue. No one would add to their weight by wearing big, heavy shoes. Some woman bought a wee pair of flip-flops to wear in the queue. This was wise. I once foolishly took off my shoes when I hadn't any socks on. That diet club met in a rugby club bar. My feet stuck to the floor a little. So did I just keep my shoes on to get weighed that night? No, I definitely didn't. The conversations up and down the queue were of a similar ilk. It was like a public confessional of who had been good and who hadn't. I remember a woman saying she drove her husband mad when she only ate half an after eight and put the other half back in the envelope. Half an after eight. I was an amateur. At the end of the queue, the scales didn't lie, even if you balance on the back of them. Some people thought they were good and got a shock as they heard sympathetic up. Others said they'd been really, really bad and ended up slimmer of the week, having lost something like a whopping 4 pounds in 1 week. They got a certificate. You'd be pleased for them, but you were generally just dead jealous. If I were a Richard O'Leary type storyteller, I would have a few certificates to show you, but mine are long gone. After the weigh-in, the teacher gave a motivational talk. The talks were very good, but everyone was starving and wanted to get home. One class I went to sold Weight Watchers sweets and snacks, but a big motherly lady would buy loads of them and pass them around during the talk, and that was frowned upon. They were only to be eating sparingly as part of your diet plan. The motherly lady whispered that if you took enough, they'd give you the runs, so keep some for next week. Another class I went to put on tea and biscuits while you were waiting, but there was an issue with the biscuits not being shared, so that stopped too. At the talk, some people would go into endless detail on what they had eaten the previous week, which made everyone even more hungry. One girl confessed to a delicious-sounding Chinese takeaway and had the whole class salivating. I certainly wouldn't have let on. My friend and I quite often stopped at the chippy on the way home. We reasoned we had a whole week before we would be held accountable, and we were starving. Almost every week, one of us would look over the other one's shoulder and pretend the diet club teacher was outside. But of course she wasn't. Ever. This was all pre-social media. Now there are any number of Facebook groups to join. Do not be tempted to join any of those groups. They are an online version of the talk, only flooding your feed at all times of the day. People actually stand in the supermarket and upload pictures of food, asking how many sins are in them. Or they upload pictures of their healthy tea, so they have about 43 people praising them. Or then upload a picture of a Chinese takeaway, #life's too short. There were masses of comments on that. I could go on. Many of the big dieting controversies are fiercely debated online. I had to leave an online group when the mashed banana debate reached fever pitch. Not just me then. My phone never stopped. You want me to explain? In a nutshell, a whole banana is a free food, but it is not if the banana is mashed, then it must be sinned. I don't understand any of that, but that's why you should never join any of those groups. Technological advances also mean that your data is stored electronically, so you have a little plastic card and the teacher doesn't write down your weight. This is obviously very efficient, but you don't have the joy of seeing the hopefully declining numbers. It's also more confidential. I went to a club by myself once and became quite friendly with the teacher. One night she said her helper would be off sick for a few weeks and would I do the money and the cards. I agreed to help her out. I was giddy with the responsibility. For every person who came in, I would take their money and hand over their card with their weight written on it. I would know everything. I wouldn't tell anyone, obviously. That would be totally against the dieting sisterhood. But I have to admit it was fascinating. Channel 4 have missed a documentary trick there. And yes, some very light people go to diet clubs too. Think back to Vanish Foucault. She was in line to win the gold medal. All her years of training went down the drain. Maybe you read about her and didn't think much of it. But for me, I was right there with her. Publicly weighed, 110 grams too much. I only wish there'd been a big motherly woman with a few packets of diet sweets. That would have sorted her out.
Rhonda, you're brilliant. How funny was that? And so many laughs of recognition around that room on the night. Thanks so much. Don't leave it so long in the future. Now, this is where I say a big thank you to everyone who donates through Patreon and at our live events as well. I'd really like to have someone redesign and update the website, so that's the next big financial challenge. We keep our overheads low so we can remain free, and that will never change. So, thank you for the support. Okay, on to our third and final story of beauty on this podcast. Please welcome Mylie Brennan.
Marilyn. It's a beautiful name that for many of us conjures images of Miss Monroe in her white dress, blonde hair. But I want to tell you about a lesser-known beautiful Marilyn. Marilyn Wolfe was born in 1931 in the middle of nowhere, USA, to a bricklayer and his wife. She was one of 10 children, and the Great Depression hit the Wolfe family particularly hard. They were dirt poor. They didn't have running water, but they did have a player piano in the corner of their living room. Marilyn would sneakily watch as her father would invite strange men into the house, and these men would take packages out of the back of the piano. It wasn't until she was much older that she realized what she had been watching was her father selling homemade moonshine in the midst of Prohibition. She would laugh and say, "That's probably how Daddy kept food on the table." Marilyn was a beautiful little girl. So beautiful, in fact, that when one of the only affluent families in town could not have children, the family with the apt name of Goodrich, the Goodriches offered to buy Marilyn from her parents. They said, "You have too many children. You cannot afford them. We can take this pretty one and give her a better life." Her mother promptly and adamantly refused, And Marilyn would go on to tell this story to her children with faux despair, saying, if my mom hadn't been so stubborn, we could have been rich. As Marilyn grew into her teenage years, she wanted to go to secretarial school in the nearby city. Unfortunately for her, her older sister had gone to that school and ended up having an affair with a married man. Her father absolutely forbade her from leaving town. Thus, Marilyn went to beauty school instead. She worked in a salon for a few years, but she never quite got over the disappointment of missing out on what was, to her, a more interesting career. Now, Marilyn was coming of age in the immediate wake of World War II. Nearly every young man she knew, including all of her brothers, went to fight in the war effort. They all came home the year she turned 14. She went on to casually date many of these soldiers, but one in particular caught her eye, Bob. Bob Pash was handsome, always well-dressed. He was an incredible dancer, and he made her laugh. They were married in 1949, the year she turned 18. They had their first son, Bobby, the next year, and they would go on to have Angela 5 years later, Sandra 15 months after Angela, and then Carrie 8 years later. Family planning doesn't always go to plan. But Marilyn loved children, and she said she didn't mind her rather extended period of motherhood. Several years later, Marilyn decided she had put her dreams of being a secretary on hold for 30 years, and it was about time she did something about it. She began working for the city clerk's office, and she was so good at her job that they asked her to run for election for city clerk treasurer. She won the election and would go on to continually be elected for another 30 years, the longest sitting Democrat in the county's history. She campaigned for a new city building. She reworked the budget so that the police and firemen would have decent headquarters. She kept the city's budget in the black her entire career, and she went on to win several awards for her work as city clerk treasurer. Turns out she had beauty and brains. Around the time Marilyn began her career, though, tragedy had struck the Pash family. Bobby, 29 years old, was driving home with his wife and 3 children when their car was struck by a drunk driver. Bobby died instantly, and 2 of the children died in hospital the following days. These kinds of experiences, losing your child, your grandchildren, rend your soul in pieces and can turn a heart quite ugly in a way that we can understand. But Marilyn and Bob, they were beautiful, resilient people, and in their depths of grief, they knew life would eventually go on. Sure enough, in the following couple of years, their youngest daughter, Carrie, became best friends with a girl named Kim. It was well known in the town that Kimmy came from a terrible family situation. She spent an entire summer at the Pashes because she and Carrie were in the same summer activities. And the Pashes made sure the girls got to all of their practices and competitions on time, which Kim would have struggled with on her own. After that summer, Bob and Marilyn agreed they wanted Kimmy to come live with them permanently. She was a good girl. They said she was a good influence on their wild daughter, Carrie. But most importantly, she needed love and support. Kimmy became part of the Pash family when she was just 16 years old. So Kimmy grew up, fell in love with a guy named Mark, and in 1993, they had me. So this is what Marilyn looked like when I met her. Marilyn and I had an incredibly special bond from that very moment. I would go on to call her Mimi. I had no idea what adoption meant, that Marilyn wasn't my biological grandmother. All I knew was unconditional, joyful love. My little sister and I spent countless weekends at Mimi and Papa's. Now, my Papa, Bob, passed away when I was only 5, so the memories I have of him are sparse. But Mimi is intertwined into nearly every memory I have of my childhood and well into adulthood. Marilyn modeled to me the importance of generosity. She was always volunteering for one organization or another. She was a mentor to so many women in our community. She also taught my sister and I the deeply held foundational tradition of the Wolf family, playing cards. My mother was not so happy about this when she walked into our bedroom one day to find us gambling, using our snacks as poker chips. But despite the occasional bad influence Marilyn was on us, she taught us how to tie our shoes, to ride our bikes. She helped us learn to read and write. She was there for every birthday party, dance recital, graduation, and eventually my wedding. My husband and I ended up moving back to my hometown for a while, which I was not so happy about at the time. But we ended up renting a house just 4 doors down from Grandma's. And that ended up being one of the sweetest periods of my life. I dropped by all the time, and I was old enough to listen to her stories with a much more appreciative ear than I'd had when I was a kid. I grew up knowing things like Great Uncle Earl had been in a submarine in World War II, that Grandma hadn't been allowed to go to secretarial school, that Bobby had died when he was 29. But I think it's only when we grow up ourselves we begin to understand the effects of these stories on our parents and grandparents. The most difficult part of moving to Belfast was leaving my beautiful Mimi. As for most people her age, the pandemic was incredibly isolating, and I knew my socially distanced visits were some of the only ones she had. But she was adamant that I follow my dreams. She had put her career on hold for so long, she did not want me to have any regrets. So I called her every week from Belfast, and every week I got to hear her say, "I love you so much, kid, and I am so proud of you." Mimi passed away in March. I didn't get to go home for the funeral, but my family asked me to write her obituary. Distilling a life like Marilyn's into a few paragraphs, and even a 10-minute story, it's really quite challenging, but it gave me the chance to think about her legacy. I mean, her life was one of poverty, disappointment, heartbreak, grief, and yet she was a woman defined by kindness, generosity, stubborn tenacity in the face of hardships, and her ability to welcome people into her life and her home. And that is what made her, to me, the most beautiful woman the world's ever seen.
Mylie, thank you so much for that gorgeous story. Marilyn sounds like a very special person, and you sent us all home that evening surrounded by love. Thank you. And that's it for this podcast. 10 by 9 moves into the autumn with plenty of events coming up, and you can see them all on our website. And while they're always free, some might require tickets from the venues. 10 by 9 is on the socials, of course. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and or Instagram. I promise not to flood your feed with nonsense, just information. Thanks to everyone who makes 10 by 9 happen, Leanne McConville and Margaret McClory, who are indispensable. Thanks too to the team at the Black Box, our home since 2011, and thanks to the 10 by 9 audience, which, as ever, was supportive and warm. And of course, thanks to all our storytellers, especially the 7 women. But the biggest thanks this week goes to Clare Duffy, Rhonda Glasgow, and Mylie Brennan. I'm Paul Doran, and I'll be back with another podcast soon. But for now, bye-bye.